For the last Sunday in March, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, the General Assembly is in the home stretch. The Atlanta police backtrack from crime, and a giant of the state of Georgia is gone. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us on this Sunday. We'll begin by acknowledging the death of Zell Miller, the former governor and U.S. senator, a giant of the state of Georgia, and we'll appreciate his life and work in just a few minutes. But we begin with the General Assembly, which is in its last days, something Zell Miller, of course, would know well, and headed towards sine die. A budget is there. That's the big thing they have to do by law. The Senate has passed a big budget. They'll have a conference this week. But several controversial bills are hanging. And Phil, I'll start with you. How do you rank them?
Well, I think Theron and I were talking just before the show, and I think transportation is a big one. And I think that the rural aid has been a big one throughout the session. And there are some, and of course, everything's going to be happening
but
before
wait, there's
now.
A bunch of, I don't mean to interrupt you, but just that rural aid thing, there's a bunch of money in the budget for rural aid.
Well,
That's
I was about to explain that.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot of money, but there were some unfunded mandates for cities and counties, and the Association of the Counties and the GMA are pointing it out. People are rushing to read the bills. This has always been a problem, whether it's in the U.S. Congress or our legislature. We've only got a few days before things end. Just a couple quick examples on a rural internet, Dick, and that is that there's language where you could, the telecom companies could tear up your front yard without any, without anything you could do about it.
But they do that already.
well, this has some local controls.
I got you.
It.
I know what you mean.
And so, and then I don't know if you want to go down a list. I know Theron has a list too of some other bills, but there was the sexual predator bill, there was the timber bill, the immigration bill.
And the adoption bill.
Yes.
Yeah. But let's talk about what they're agreed on, and then we'll do that. Right. There are no teacher pay raises in this budget, which is somewhat unusual, but they had to do a $361 million bailout of the teacher pension fund. Mm-hmm. So the new money in the budget, because of the growing economy, seems to be going in general toward teacher pensions. I think we're going to see that in future years.
And some law enforcement raises too.
Well, that's true, and that, by the way, again, impinges on local control.
Right.
The adoption bill is stopped, Alexis. Why?
Well, I think because of the prospect of getting Amazon here or losing Amazon headquarters, because the opponents of the measure say that the bill provides the opportunity to discriminate against gay couples and gay foster kids, if they don't want to place them.
But you know what? If the agencies who believe that don't come here, how's anybody being discriminated against?
Well, it's the
Isn't
fact
the
that
idea to get kids in homes?
Well, it's the fact that it's written into the law that is the objection.
Theron, what's on your shopping list?
I think the one thing that everyone is talking about is these transit bills that we've talked about a lot on the show. I mean, you have a House version that was passed out of the House from Chairman Tanner, and then you had a Senate version that was passed out of the Senate from Chairman Brandon Beach. And so there's a robust debate happening at the Capitol this week going into the final week. It's going to be really left up to the legislature to really figure out if they can get everyone on the same accord to try to pass a transit.
13 counties is the goal, correct?
Right now, the way it's currently written is they will have 13 counties that will create this sort of authority. And I think the big talks also, Dick, is that how do you now, you have Jeff Parker, who we talked about, just coming in. I think he'll be starting next week. How do you make sure that you protect MARTA, still allow them to operate under the current MARTA Act, but at the same time grow the transit across the region? And there's a lot of big push from Gwinnett County. Their chairwoman there is really pushing pretty hard to try to get this done, because she has suggested that she would like for this to be on the November ballot in Gwinnett County if it was to get
and
passed.
To your point, Cobb County isn't sure it wants it on any ballot.
Yeah, and then there's also some talks whether we want to incorporate some space for North Fulton and South Fulton as well.
Now, you mentioned local law enforcement funding. I think that's a dangerous road for the state to go down. That's an unfunded mandate, essentially, Phil, from the state to local governments.
Right.
Shouldn't local governments be subject to the laws of supply and demand?
Well, I agree with that concept too. One of the problems, of course, was that the state troopers got a raise and then the local folks got upset. And so the legislature, with all good intentions, has created this problem.
All right. Phil, your area, immigration. I noticed that a bill that started out as kind of a tough immigration bill, and of course there's a campaign overlay on all this we'll talk about later, but it looks like it's been kind of gutted in committee. Is that your take on it?
It was. This is a bill that would create more cooperation between your local law enforcement and courts with ICE, the Immigration Control Enforcement, to try to identify who's here and what's their citizenship status. A common sense bill. Something's going to pass. You point out the politics of this. This is something Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle likes very much. It was gutted in the House. One of the bad guys is Representative Heath Clark of Warner Robins, who apparently has no idea as to how to control illegal immigration. I think something's going to happen. We'll know more by the show next week.
Well, I think that's an unfair characterization about
Why?
the opponents of the measure, because the immigration should be a federal territory area of legislation, not state.
Well, no, I don't know why you say that, because that has totally changed since 9/11. Well, since 9/11, even Democrats have agreed you have to have some states. California is doing things on its own as a state, your favorite
That's
state.
because the federal government refuses to act. The Congress, National Congress,
so
will not take
you don't
action.
want any cooperation with the feds on removing criminal,
There's already
illegal
cooperation
aliens?
going on.
That's incredible that you would say that.
We're doing this debate, and Phil's a little, riled up because this is his core issue that he speaks around the state about. And what happened when the bill was gutted is, I think Representative Heath Clark, I think that's a bad characterization of what he's saying. I think that at a time that we are sitting here, 10% of Georgia, not Atlanta, not the metro area, 10% of Georgia is made up of immigrants. And so while they're contributing to our economy,
Legal and illegal.
Yeah, well, that's my point. So I think that these people are coming here, they're trying their best to try to have a pathway to citizenship. There are some that are not, but those who are doing it right, who are making contributions to this economy and to this state, should not be criminalized.
This has nothing to do with this, Darren. This has to do with criminal, illegal aliens.
We're talking about illegal immigrants.
Well, but you got to have some. To Alexis' point, you can't penalize all of them, because there's many times where people don't separate the illegal immigrants.
If
from
they're
the
legal, they have no problem.
Yeah, but I think that.
So if they're legal, they don't have anything to worry about.
But I think to come over here and just criticize.
Isn't it reasonable to ask local law enforcement to keep a list and to refer illegal criminal aliens when they're arrested?
That's the point of this bill.
But that implies you have to go around and ask, papers, please. Let me see your papers.
That is now.
That's fine.
That's also federal law for illegals.
Yes, but it imposes the extra activity of enforcing immigration at the local level, which should not be their responsibility.
All states have immigration laws where there's enforcement. That's been the biggest myth that the liberals have talked about. These states have a right to control illegal immigration too.
Local. You're right. It's a state.
We've got to get out of this segment. One bill that has passed, it's my favorite. I don't speak around the state on it, but
Is it Sunday brunch?
But no, Sunday brunch is good. No, I'm for that. Thank you.
And that passed, by the way. That passed for the viewers.
But that timber bill imposed on urban Georgia by rural Georgia has passed. And I will just tell you, I think there will be a lawsuit in the coming weeks that will say that some cities have the right to demand higher quality buildings and safer fire buildings from fire. It's a silly bill, but it sure passed. Boy, it went through it like grease through a goose. All right, when we come back, we're going to look at local news, where in Atlanta the police have taken, in my mind, a major step backward. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
This coming month is the 20th anniversary of the tornadoes that hit Dunwoody and parts of Sandy Springs, and I remember them well, and we're going to commemorate them. So I just want to send my best wishes to the people in South Fulton County who had a tornado. Chestnut Ridge, I believe, is the name of the subdivision. We seem unclear on where it is. Is it in the city of South Fulton or Fairburn? But there were brand new homes and just wrecked.
Awful.
And so I understand their what they're going through there. And we also should acknowledge that the city of Atlanta's computer system was hacked.
Yes.
But we don't know to what extent. I don't want to spend any time discussing it because we don't know how serious
The
it is.
payrolls are okay. They did assure people that the workers would be paid, and that wasn't affected.
All right,
Well,
so
not that it wasn't affected, but they just assured them that they would be paid.
Right.
okay, so
So
let's
they're still
turn.
investigating.
Let's turn to Morse Diggs' scoop this week. Morse Diggs of Fox 5 News reported and interviewed Police Chief Erica Shields of Atlanta. She will no longer send officers to investigate shoplifting complaints in Buckhead. It was a Zone 2 issue. That's Buckhead. And of course, that's where all the shops worth lifting are located. And I just don't think you can say to the police, you don't answer shoplifting calls. That's terrible, Phil.
Well, it's an invitation for more shoplifting. I'm shocked that she made a public pronunciation on this. I understand there's staffing problems and priority problems, but this is the wrong signal. If we're the capital city of the best state in the country to do business, you don't say things or do things like that. And I'm hoping this is rescinded. The police are upset. The business owners are upset. Some of them now have to pay out of their own pocket for off-duty Atlanta policemen, for example, to make the arrests.
Well, to make her case, just to be fair to her, she did say that, you know, every shoplifting arrest took 90 minutes of an officer's time. Investigate the complaint, haul the criminal away, book them, all
Haul
that
them to
kind
jail,
of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, and it was 90 minutes, but she didn't want to do that. She wants to focus the officers on more serious crimes. But if you're a merchant with a small operating margin, shoplifting can range from, you know, a pair of sunglasses to a big haul.
Yeah.
I think it hurts business, and it is an invitation in my mind to shoplifters.
Well,
I don't think we got to go down this slippery slope or just inferring that Chief Shields doesn't want to do anything about shoplifting in the city of Atlanta. What she did reference a zone that, you're right, primarily the people who live in that zone are in Buckhead. So I think what, you know, to Mo Diggs' story is that she was basically saying it's a capacity issue. We know that as we sit here right now that there are about 300 officers short.
That's correct.
Of being at full capacity. And so I think we've got to be fair to the chief and say, look, she's trying to be smart on crime, and more importantly, she's trying to deal with all crime, but at the same time, there is particular resource issues that she's got to allocate. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, Phil wants us to believe that she doesn't want to stop shoplifting in north part of our city, in the Buckhead. Well, they're shoplifting all over the city of Atlanta. And so I think that it becomes an issue of how you're spending the officers'
Would
time.
you have done a
Point.
public
Well,
announcement?
address
Darren?
Phil's
But I think that
Would you have done a public
we
announcement?
come on this show and we ask for
He won't
transparency.
answer that.
No, I'm gonna get to a public interview. It wasn't an announcement, by the way.
Well, she announced it on TV.
But it's an interview. You're a journalist, you know that. She has been transparent because, you know, Phil calls for transparency all the time, right? She had a sit-down interview to walk Mo Diggs through some of the things that she's changing as chief. And so I just think that at a time when we know that overall crime in Atlanta is down, shoplifting, we have seen a little bit of a spike, that this chief is really trying to figure out how she can get at full capacity, at the same time make sure that she allocates the resources and the officers' time to reduce crime in the entire
She
city.
said serious crimes were up, and that's why she had to pull away from the shoplifting. So you get your point straight. Is crime down or up?
Overall crime is down, Phil. You know that.
She said not for carjackings, not for shootings and assaults. You
and
missed that.
Well, the point is that she has been very strategic about how she is applying the time and energy of the force. She said in the past they were graded on a how many arrests, statistics, right?
Yeah.
Data. But now she's focusing on crime and criminal issues as opposed to making that the priority rather than how many arrests you make. Because people can make 100 arrests.
And I get the priorities. I get that part of it. I just don't like the fact that she's saying this publicly.
I agree with you. I think that's the shocking part, really.
Well, she's just very candid.
So
She's
you
very
think of a
candid.
police chief is on TV talking about how she, to Alexis' point, want to be smarter on crime and trying to reduce it is going to make shoplifters more inclined to go out and rob or less inclined. It doesn't matter. If people want to steal, Dick, they're going to steal. They're going to steal in Sandy Springs. They're going to steal in Dunwoody. They're going to steal in the south side of town. And so I think that
it matters if a small businessman has to pay money out of his own pocket for security. Whatever happened to protect and
Let's change the
serve?
subject. We're running out of time in this. And you know, we have to be careful how we handle all this, because I would say all the stuff we just said is interesting because we're compelling, right? But what are people talking about? They're talking about the MacIver trial.
Yeah.
So let's just take a minute. Phil, I'll let you do it. Highlight the week. I'm glued to it, by the way.
Well, many people are.
I have seen or read, I think, every shred of testimony.
Well, it obviously is the talk of the town again, and it's going to be dragging on into April. And of course, for those who maybe have been out of the country, this is a prominent Atlanta attorney that's accused of felony murder of his businesswoman wife, Diane MacIver. And so Tex MacIver, I think, is not coming across, I'm giving a quick analysis, he's not coming across as being likable. And I think that's very important for a jury. Now, someone can be not guilty and not be likable, yes. I think it again hinges, like I said last week, on motive. I'm thinking that the prosecution may have overcharged with felony murder, which is an intent to murder.
And I agree with you, by the way.
Yeah. Now, another charge, which is very worrisome for Tex MacIver, is intimidating witnesses. That's another charge. That
tampering, even.
Tampering. And that is going to be coming up over the next week. So I think that charge is going to be interesting, and all of these are felonies. And so.
And the bad headline of the week was from the driver of the car,
yes,
the victim's best friend, who said he asked me to lie.
So
that's
this
not
is
a good headline.
It's not been a good week for Tex MacIver.
No.
Okay. All right. When we return, we'll shovel the deck and we will turn the subject to a true giant of Georgia politics, the late Zell Miller. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Few Georgians have the resume of Zell Miller. He died Friday at age 86. How do you even talk about all those years as lieutenant governor, U.S. senator, keynote speaker at a national convention, the creator of the Hope Scholarship and the lottery, a Democrat.
And then a Republican at
well,
the
never
end.
Officially became a Republican,
No.
but a Democrat
at the national convention. That's
who
where
was
he
a
spoke.
very liberal Democrat for much of his career, and then became the most conservative Democrat in the state after being sent to the U.S. Senate by appointment, not by election, but by Governor Roy Barnes. He was a regular viewer of this broadcast, and I've had some tussles with him over that through the years. I don't think, Phil, we're going to see another person as colorful as Zell Miller. We've gone to colorless politicians.
Well, we have
Miller
for
was a
now.
giant.
But I think both parties have some young folks that can be colorful. But let's go back to, again, condolences to the Miller family, and he was a pillar of Georgia politics. He wrote a very interesting book on influential Georgians that I would recommend, especially to high school and college students. But you mentioned something that his legacy will long live into the 21st century, and that is the establishment in 1990 of the Georgia lottery. That was dicey. That then Governor candidate Miller talked about. Many politicians, in fact, I think on the gang, they thought that it was crazy for him to advocate the lottery and tie it to this unique Hope Scholarship, which has benefited hundreds of thousands of students since then. And I would say the establishment of the Atlanta airport and the establishment of the lottery were the best things that ever happened to Georgia in the 20th century, and we owe Zell Miller for that lottery.
Yeah, and it's an amazing career. You know, he was an ex-Marine. He was tough as a boot, and he toiled as lieutenant governor. And I'm going on the fly here, but I believe 16 years.
Was it?
Something like that, a long time. I used to tease him in columns and say that he was the permanent lieutenant governor. But then he made that run in 1990 for governor, using the lottery as his tool.
Yes.
And there was a Democratic primary with Andy Young.
That's right.
That was real politics.
And he beat
Yes,
Johnny
Real
Isakson
people. And he
that
beat
November.
Johnny Isakson, another prominent Georgian, in the general election. I think Zell Miller Theron, you're a political operative. You saw how James Carville and Paul Begala worked with Zell Miller on the lottery. First, they had to pass a referendum of the people, and then you had to be sure that when the lottery was created, the money actually went to Hope Scholarships.
Right.
Because in most states it didn't. It just goes away.
Well, you got to think about it. When Zell Miller was elected governor, and to Phil's point and to your point, Dick, that he really did something that was very unpopular. He brought a lottery in, and there was tremendous resistance for gambling in Georgia at that time. But then also he made it very specific that it needed to be tied to the Holt Scholarship, which is the most popular.
He pinned it down.
But he did something else that I think we got to remember him by. I think around 1992, he brought back a young state representative from Athens, Georgia, called Michael Thurman, and actually empowered him to usher through welfare reform. And this was something that the Clinton administration at the time was supporting. It was a national movement. Thurman went over and took over the state defects department and ushered in welfare reform, and it impacted tens of thousands of low-income families across the state and gave them a pathway to a better life. And so I think that, look, there are some of those in the Democratic Party who were a little upset with Zell at times when he decided to switch and caucus and pretty much be very aligned with the Republican Party. But overall, he served the state in a great capacity, and we're definitely going to miss him. And I'm really interested to learn more about what his grandson is doing with the Miller Institute. They kicked off a wonderful event a couple months ago, and he's going to be one of the Georgians that we're going to truly miss.
Alexis, was he the last conservative Democrat? Is that fair to say?
No, John Barrow was there.
Yeah. Well,
John Barrow's a flaming liberal. Come on. Please.
no, I think you're right in terms of being the old school yellow dog Democrat, maybe.
Well, you know, the guy started out with Lester Maddox. Think about that.
That's right.
He was
As
executive secretary.
assistant to executive secretary to Lester
Right.
Maddox. He was with the segregationist Democrats. He moved. You can't say that this was a man who was static in his career.
He zigged and he zagged. That's what I used to call him in the
Zigzag
editorial.
Zell.
Zigzag Zell.
Well, that's what I was leading to. Well said. Exactly. But in the end, he zagged right.
He did.
Or,
and you know, he
or
said his
wrong,
party left him.
depending on your point of view.
You know, the party of the working man. He had a populist streak in him. And he said the Democratic Party left the working man.
Well,
All right.
When Phil can't start quoting the Democratic Party, we're in trouble.
Let's turn real quickly to the current day politics, if we may. I will posit to you that the stories this last week or so about the Democratic frontrunner for governor, Stacey Abrams, I think she's been damaged. I think it won't hurt her in the primary, but it's going to kill her in the general election. The idea that she had a financial services firm that did state contracts.
well, I think it may do some damage. However, the column that that Galloway did in the reminded everybody of the financial issues that
With Nathan Deal?
had.
Well,
And
the
it-
Democrats were all upset about Nathan Deal's
Well,
finances,
but
and
he-
now
well,
they
I'm
say
just
it's
saying,
nothing.
Well, I'm not saying it's nothing. I'm just saying he still won. That's the point that they were making, despite his different difficulties.
All right, we got to get out real quick at the federal budget. We don't know where that stands.
I
We
think
don't
the
know if
president
there's a shutdown. The president may veto it.
this big spending
There's
bill.
good stuff in there for Georgia, but
Who knows?
report and so forth. All right, when we come back, sometimes deadlines do this to us, but when we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we were a little down on Facebook traffic this week, so pick it up, folks. I like to hear those alerts coming in. It tells us we've reached you in some way or another. And don't forget us on YouTube. Phil, winners and losers.
Well, I think we all agree Zell Miller is our winner of the week. What a legacy, as we talked about earlier in the broadcast. I've got another winner, prominent Atlanta attorney Emery Schwall. He was honored by the state Senate the other day. Practiced law here, is still doing it for 68 years. He's going to be turning 90 in April, and a big philanthropist, whether it's at the Shepherd Center or Piedmont, and just a lion of the legal profession. And my loser, I'm sorry, it's City Attorney Jeremy Berry. We didn't get to talk about it much last week, but you know, he hid those billing records from the public when it came to that federal corruption probe. He's with the Baker Donaldson firm. He diverted it into another account. That is not ethical. Loser.
Okay, Alexis.
Okay, I'm going to first salute Kevin Riley and Monica Richardson for a program at the Atlanta History Center this week commemorating 50 years since the assassination. They had a really moving and riveting panel, including Bernice King, Andy Young, Shirley Franklin, Zernona Clayton, and Hank Klibanoff, and David Garrow. It was a very interesting conversation they had talking about Atlanta and how it was 50 years ago and what's going on now is very wonderful.
It's been a fast 50 years, I hate to say it.
Indeed. And then also I want to congratulate Stan Little as the new president of SunTrust Foundation. Richard Cox is the new chief operating officer for the city of Atlanta, a loan executive from...
And walked right into a computer
walked
hack
right into cyber attack. He said,
job.
thanks, way to begin.
Yeah.
And then, and also before March is over, I want to recognize that 5 of the 15 mayors in Fulton County are women.
Oh, well, you've been counting.
I've been counting.
That's interesting.
It's very good.
All right, Theron.
Well, to continue Alexa's theme with the Women's History Month, and so congratulations to all the wonderful mayors that are women out there. I want to also salute Atlanta Corrections Chief Labatt, and Interim Human Resources Commissioner Sherry Dickerson. They did a salute to women in public safety lunch and learn, and so this is a wonderful way for them to honor all the women who put their lives on the line every single day to protect us in the city. And then also Senator Gail Davenport, who took the well this week in the Senate. She is going through a tough battle in health care with cancer, and she just reminded all of us to take care of ourselves, but more importantly, I want to thank her for her courageous leadership and continuing to want to serve her district. So I would definitely want to make her a winner.
All right, I will salute Zell Miller as well. He and I had our differences, fun differences over the years, but that 90 campaign was one for the history books that I loved covering. I will make as a loser Stacey Abrams. This thing's going to hurt her down the road. And finally, baseball comes back to SunTrust Park this week. Hey, the bats, the balls, we're back. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.